Hello, and welcome back to another Power2Protect podcast. I'm your host, Colm Keegan from the Data Protection Product Marketing team here at Dell Technologies. One of the big challenges organizations have today is data management. On the one hand, there is a need to make data available across distributed, hybrid, multi-cloud environments. And then on the other hand, there is a need to centralize data to maintain security and compliance. The question is, where does the balance lie? The answer isn't as clear-cut as one might think. While distributing data across multi-cloud platforms can enhance processing speed and improve localization, centralizing data offers better visibility and control. Just consider that 72% of respondents to the Dell 2022 GDPI survey stated that they lack visibility into workloads and data across their hybrid multi-cloud environments due to DevOps and cloud development processes. And not surprisingly, 67% of these respondents aren't very confident that data across all public clouds are protected. In addition to increased data protection and cybersecurity risks, this uncertainty can directly impact the speed of digital modernization initiatives, resulting in slower time to market and a reduced return on investment. Joining me today to discuss what organizations can do to overcome the challenges of managing distributed data in today's hybrid multi-cloud world is Dekhayser from Equinix. Glenn, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Colm. Great to be here.
So Glenn, as you know, there was some chatter in the market in recent months about some organizations that were starting to repatriate their workloads out of the public cloud due to exorbitant costs. And while this may be only anecdotal, there is also some shifting sentiment with respect to things like security and whether that's better in on-premises environments versus the public cloud. And then lastly, there are concerns over data privacy and compliance, which could alter how organizations consume cloud. What's your take on what's happening in the market?
Yeah, despite some of those stories about repatriation, the market is clearly still a hybrid multi-cloud one where organizations are running about a 50-50 mix of workloads on-prem and across multi-cloud. And frankly, there are no signs that's going to change anytime soon. In fact, some of the analysts think there will be an increasing shift to the public cloud, but it seems to me that when it all washes out, there's still going to be a healthy footprint of workloads on-prem, even with an increased adoption of public cloud.
Yeah, that sounds right about to me. We're seeing the same things. So the bigger question then is, what can organizations do to mitigate the risks associated with managing a lot of data and a lot of workloads that are becoming increasingly distributed? Because it's not just on-prem and multi-cloud, right? We're also seeing more data out in remote offices and edge locations. So this is something that many people in the C-suite, are rightfully concerned about. And, with cyber threats and compliance risks and of course, increasing costs, both people costs and increasing cloud costs, what can they do to navigate these rough waters?
Well, it requires rethinking fundamentally how you manage your data. The fact is, where your data is physically located really matters. As you open the podcast with, there's a need on the one hand for data to be massively distributed to foster innovation. There's also a need for data to be centrally managed to ensure data security, privacy, and protection. It almost seems counterintuitive that you can do both, but in fact you can. And the trick is in data locality.
What do you mean exactly by data locality?
By data locality, I mean where your data is stored. To manage, protect, and secure your data, you need it to be centrally located, but at the same time, distributed workloads need fast access to the data. So one very effective way of accomplishing both of these objectives is to locate your data in a multi-cloud adjacent data set.
Okay, so talk about what multi-cloud adjacency means.
Sure. Cloud vendors, for the most part, are aggregated in metros where they can serve the most customers, meaning multiple cloud vendors are accessible, low latencies at many metros globally. So let's take North America, for example. You got New York, you got Silicon Valley, Dallas, a few others. By hosting your data in data centers like Equinix that are adjacent to the network connections of cloud providers like AWS, Azure, and Google, and others, there's plenty of other cloud service providers, you can create a very fast on-ramp to the public cloud. And this in turn enables you to manage your data centrally in one or more of these multi-cloud adjacent data centers while giving your workloads in the public cloud or out in your edge locations very fast access to data. So while your data is not physically in the cloud, to your workloads in the cloud, data access feels like it's local.
That's interesting. So does this mean that you have to put all of your data into one of these multi-cloud adjacent data centers, to get the dual benefit of centralized management as well as super fast access to the public cloud?
Not at all. What many organizations do today is place some of their data and apps in one or more multi-cloud adjacent data centers, and then have the rest of their applications and data in their on-premise data centers. For example, business apps, financials, or data that falls under corporate data governance or compliance regulations such as systems of record, they're often maintained in an organization's on-premises data center environment. On the other hand, web apps, mobile apps, AI, dev and test, they may be placed in a multi-cloud adjacent data center to give those workloads ultra-fast access to the public cloud.
All right. Now, I really see how you can get the benefits of centralizing all your data, regardless if the application or workload is running directly in the cloud. What about data egress costs? This is something that tends to be a big problem for a lot of organizations, right? If a workload has to retrieve data that is outside the cloud, isn't that going to run up the meter from a data egress standpoint?
Actually, when a workload retrieves data from outside the cloud, that's ingress. So there's no cost at all. The challenge comes when that same workload has to then send data out to apps or perhaps replicate data outside of the cloud. This is where egress becomes a big contributing factor to higher cloud costs. There are, however, ways to mitigate these egress fees. For instance, you can have direct connections to the various cloud vendors. So some multi-cloud adjacent data centers like Equinix, we're set up with direct high-speed connections to major public cloud providers. Services like AWS Direct Connect, Azure Express Route, Google Cloud's Cloud Interconnect, they allow for dramatically reduced data transfer rates compared to egress over the internet. Another way to mitigate cloud egress cost is by intelligent data placement and replication. This is something that Dell does as a matter of course with all of their storage platforms. Keeping a read-write copy of data sets on multi-cloud adjacent storage that you control, and by the way, can audit, replicating these data sets into the cloud where high performance and very low latency are required allows for the subsequent deletion of those cloud data sets once they're no longer needed. This avoids the expensive egress of those large data sets when you want to go do something else with that data. Finally, you've got data transfer reduction techniques. And so techniques like data compression, you've got deduplication, caching. These techniques can help reduce the amount of data that actually needs to get transferred over those lines, further reducing the egress costs. So one thing that's really important to add is that locating your data outside all the clouds provides optionality. It keeps the enterprise always in control of its data and workloads, keeping topics like data egress out of the opportunity decision-making, ensuring that workloads are run and data is stored in the best places determined by the business needs instead of artificial cost constructs designed to punish workload mobility.
Yeah, I think that last point is super important. Many organizations are very concerned about cloud vendor lock-in. If your data is captive to a specific cloud environment, you are in a very real sense locked in because the time, effort, expense, and risk associated with moving all of your data out of the cloud, let's say as a repatriation effort, can be substantial.
No question about it. Unfortunately, many organizations have had to learn this the hard way. The fact is, you can have the flexibility of using any cloud provider you want without committing your data footprint inside the four walls of a cloud service provider. Let's face it, business needs change all the time. So if you need to move quickly to run workloads in one cloud provider over another, or if you have a compelling business reason to repatriate your workloads, you need that flexibility and lack of complexity from a data movement and data management perspective.
Yeah, those are all good points. Let's talk about data protection and cyber resiliency. A lot of organizations see the cloud as a great destination for supporting backup and DR as well as cyber recovery. How can multi-cloud adjacent environments enhance data protection and cyber resiliency?
Multi-cloud adjacent environments improve data protection and cyber resiliency through enhanced data management. By regionally centralizing the protection of your cloud data assets, you have more control over them. This in turn leads to improved protection, security, and cyber resiliency. As importantly, you're still giving all of your workloads super fast access to data through very high speed connections to and from the cloud. With that said, let's talk a little bit about cyber resiliency. Many organizations are interested in protecting their most critical data by deploying a digital vault that is isolated from the production network. While you can deploy a digital vault in the cloud or to your own secondary data center, when you're using a multi-cloud adjacent environment like Equinix as your data management hub, you have the flexibility to protect and secure your workloads any way you see fit, whether that's replicating backup copies to the public cloud for protection, protecting public cloud workloads back to your private cloud, or protecting your workloads to a secondary data center.
Can you talk a little bit about how Dell and Equinix are working together to help our customers take advantage of multi-cloud adjacent data center environments?
Absolutely. So the Dell portfolio, including the compute, storage, and data protection lines, provide a physical and software-defined infrastructure that provide consistent data management tooling across all hybrid multi-cloud environments. Further, the combined portfolio enables efficient data movement between cloud-adjacent data centers, on-prem and edge locations, to the public cloud and back. It also provides enhanced data security and protection, with flexibility to use the public cloud as a target for protecting private cloud, on-prem and Equinix workloads, protecting cloud-based workloads back to that private cloud. And finally, it also allows for flexible cyber recovery options, such as vaulting to a secondary DC, another Equinix Metro, Equinix Metal for a clean room, or maybe the public cloud.
Glenn, thanks. This has been really informative. Clearly, there are many advantages to leveraging multi-cloud adjacent data centers as part of a hybrid multi-cloud data management strategy. And we're really excited to be working with you and your organization to help our customers simplify how they manage, protect, and secure their data, while also reducing costs. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, please give us a 5-star review on our Apple Podcast channel, where you can also find more of our podcasts. Our podcasts are also available on Spreaker. Also, be sure to visit dell.com/data protection for additional information about PowerProtect appliances and software, as well as all of our data protection solution offerings. This is Colm Keegan signing off. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to come back soon for another Power2Protect podcast.